We're unmuted now.
Yes.
We're unmuted.
Your Honor, and we're unmuted now.
Ready to go? Okay.
That's good news. Oh, Jerry's the,
Hi, Mary.
Hi, Judge. I just call. How are you?
Good, good. Hi, Anton.
Yeah, unmute. Your Honor, you ready to unmute?
Yes.
No.
Let's begin. Good day, everyone. For the record, my name is Jonathan Kwan. I'm the chairman of the Criminal Law Procedure Review Commission. We're here for the fourth plenary meeting of the commission. It is now 12:01 p.m. August 31st, and this meeting is called to order. At this point, if Valerie would take roll call, please.
I will now begin the roll call. Honorable Jonathan R. Kwan,
Present, Commissioner Wong.
Honorable Anita A. Secola,
Present.
Attorney William Bucky Brennan,
President of the Judiciary.
Acting Director of Corrections Fred Berdalio,
Present.
Chief of Police Stephen Ignacio, or designee, Attorney Joseph McDonald,
Present.
Attorney Randall Cunliffe, Mr. Monty McDowell, Attorney Stephen Hattori, or designee Attorney John Morrison,
Present. John Morrison from the Judiciary.
Attorney General Douglas Moylan, or designee Marianne Wolashuk,
Present.
Attorney Michael Phillips, Miss Valerie Regis, Attorney Christine Tenorio, Attorney Philip Tidinko.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, there are 8 commission members present.
We have a quorum.
Yes, we do. Oh, I'm sorry. For the record, I will call on the roll call ex officio members, Executive Director Serge Kenga,
Present.
and compiler of laws Jerry Cepeda.
Present.
Yes, we do have a quorum.
Also, like to look at the record, we have Honorable Elizabeth Barrett Anderson present, ex officio, also present as well. All right. So let us begin. We are in person in the Joaquin William and Vincent Senior Memorial Courtroom in the Digital Center. We are also on Zoom for those members who are not able to attend in person. We are live on the Judiciary's YouTube channel right now, and we are streaming in the Digital Center Atrium. At this point, please put up the next slide. On the agenda, item 2. I know for the record that due notice of today's meeting has been provided pursuant to the requirements of the open government law. Copies of the newspaper notices are included in your packets. On agenda item 3, we'll start with the roll. We'll continue with the roll call. At this point, we have determined we have a quorum of 8. Is that correct, Matt?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, we can proceed. 8 members are present plus ex officio members as well. All right. I have ascertained we have a quorum and can conduct the business of the commission at this meeting. All right. For agenda item 4, minutes for approval. We have the minutes from the commission's 3rd plenary meeting of April 6th for approval today. These minutes have been provided to the members in your packets. May I have a motion to approve these, please? Anyone?
I move to approve the minutes.
There a second?
Second.
Wait, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Before continuing to the business of the commission, I would like to welcome back all the members. This is the first meeting we've had since Typhoon Mawar, which has caused cancellation of the plenary meeting we had planned for June 8th, 2023. Our subcommissions, however, have been diligently meeting to the best of their abilities since the typhoon, considering power and internet difficulties, recovering from storm damage to their homes and offices, and travel obligations. I note that many of our members are from our law enforcement communities, whose focus was and continues to be on typhoon recovery. And many members are practicing attorneys who have had to catch up on case client and court obligations. Nonetheless, they have been meeting in working sessions and continue to do so. At this point, please bring up the next slide. Okay. Membership update. On agenda item 5, old business. Under old business, we have the membership update. I would like to acknowledge our newest members, Acting Director Fred Berdalio of the Department of Corrections. Director Berdalio comes to the commission with many years of experience in law enforcement and as a former chief of Guam Police Department. We welcome Director Berdalio's valuable experience with Guam criminal statutes to the commission. He will be serving on the CLRC subcommission on drugs and other criminal offenses. We are still waiting for the governor to appoint a member to replace the Honorable Elizabeth Barrett Anderson, who has stepped down due to her service on the Criminal Injuries Compensation Commission. Next slide, please. We would also welcome Attorney Lenny Rapata to the CLRC as volunteer auxiliary ex officio member of the Subcommission on Criminal Procedure. Attorney Rapata brings many years of experience as a prosecutor, chief prosecutor, U.S. Attorney and Attorney General Forum. He now works at the Office of the Public Defender's Office and will also bring both prosecution and defense experience in review our criminal statute. We continue to invite volunteers to our commission. Subcommission chairs should address requests for appointments to myself or the executive director if you have someone in mind. Please go to this next slide. Turning now to item 6, new business. We have presentations by the first of the subcommission on criminal procedure, and then by the subcommission on crimes relating to property. These subcommissions will provide a report of their review of statutes and present recommendations for discussion, and if ready, approval by the voting members of our commission. If you would turn to the Excel spreadsheet, please. This will be handed out the next meeting. And what you're going to see in the package and what's going to be going on through today, and it'll start to see from this distance, is the subcommissions will indicate which statutes they are requesting or recommending amendments or repeal. Otherwise, it's going to be no change. And these will be handed out later. This is just a bird's eye view. The subcommission presentations will go through their recommendations. I want to thank the 2 subcommissions that are presented today. In review, the preparation of that spreadsheet, I noticed that there was a significant amount of work that was done. And I want to thank you for your efforts. So with that, I would like to turn this over to the Honorable Anita Sokola and to the Executive Director, Serge Kenya, for their presentation. Judge Sokola, the floor is
Thank
yours,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan. Thank you all members, and members of my committee include Marianne Walshop from the AG's office, Brian Eagleston with Public Defender, and as noted earlier, Lenny Rapadas. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Lenny
ma'am.
Rapadas, and of course, we have Serge Kenya in our committee. This is the committee for the Criminal Procedure Subcommittee that we are primarily responsible for Title 8 Guam Code Annotated, which was adopted in Public Law 13-198 in 1976. However, because the CLRC's enabling statute, Public Law 36119, prioritized the review of Title 9, the Criminal Correctional Code. The chairman, Mr. Kwan, had assigned several chapters of the Guam Code's annotated Title 9 to our subcommittee for review. And at this time, I would like to turn the review process over to Mr. Serge Kenya, and we will go through what we have done and explain to you what we have looked at and what we made recommendations for in terms of repeal or to send to another committee. Mr. Kenya.
Thank you, Judge Sokola. It's my honor to present our subcommission's report today on the chapters that we reviewed. Jerry, could you please go on to the next slide? Now, as Judge Sokola mentioned, our primary focus for the Criminal Procedure Subcommission is Title 8. However, because we've had to prioritize Title 9, the Chairman Kwan assigned several chapters you see here. They include Chapter 71, Gun-Free School Zone, Chapter 8, Disposition of Offenders, 81, Reduction of Sentences, and so forth, all the way through to Chapter 93. Skipping some in between, which have been assigned to other subcommissions. In addition to the chapters that we've looked at from Title 9, we have also begun and nearly completed our initial review of the chapters in Title 8 Criminal Procedure Code. We will return to the Title 8 chapters for a more detailed review. We note that much of Title 8 may be referred to the Supreme Court of Guam for incorporation in the forthcoming Guam Rules of Criminal Procedure. But our review today will be limited to the Title 9 chapters assigned to our subcommission. Next slide, please. So, we're starting with Chapter 71, which is the Guam Gun-Free School Zone Act of 2004. This Chapter 71 was not part of the original Criminal and Correctional Code adopted in 1976 by Public Law 13-185. It was added in 2004 by Public Law 27-116, but it has not been amended since it was adopted. None of the sections in this chapter are substantively addressed in Superior Court and Supreme Court decisions that are available online for review. Therefore, its enforcement may be infrequent. We recommend referral of this chapter to the Subcommission of Crimes Against Persons, which has GPD as a member, for review and comment. Any feedback from that subcommission or other subcommissions, we recommend the following changes. The first change we recommend is to correct the typo in section 7120C. This is a definition of concealed firearm. It mistakenly makes reference to 9 Guamco annotated, section 60.108. It should make a reference to 10 Guamco annotated. The typo is in the original public law and can be corrected by the compiler laws under her authority in the Guamco annotated. The next recommendation we have is a simple one. It's just to clarify the title of section 7130. The original title was person not allowed to possess firearms. We thought that was a very general title, so we'd like to narrow it to the substance of the chapter, to possession of firearm in a school zone. Just to provide a little more clarification for that section. Next slide, please, Barry. We'd next like to suggest amendments to section 7160 to remove unnecessary verbiage. 7160 is a punishment section in this chapter. Changes that you see here are intended to remove redundant language. The section 71.30, 71.40, and 71.50, we feel do not need to be stated twice in the same paragraph. And so we simply consolidate the language to make reference to the sections once. And the changes here should not make any substantive difference from the original law. So in subparagraph A, we'd like to point out, not necessarily make any suggested changes to the subparagraph, that the penalties have not been changed since adoption of the law in 2004. However, we reviewed the fines and sentences in chapter 60 of 10 Guamco annotated, which governs firearms, and the penalties in this section 71.60A appear to be consistent with the fines and penalties of the firearms. Moving on to subsection B, we're simply recommending to remove the phrase "if" for a term of years, which is unnecessary language. In subsection B, the minimum sentence is 5 years, so it's for a term of years anyway. Under subsection C, the intent here is to remove redundant and confusing language. It appears that the same thing is mentioned twice, namely that the court can deviate in sentencing, quote, without the minimum required in the subdivision, or, quote, other than set forth in the section. We also like to note that the word subdivision is used alternatively with the word section. We will change references to section throughout the chapter where it's necessary. So again, these changes are should not be substantive, just to simply clarify, remove unnecessary or redundant language. Next slide, please, Jerry. And if you have any questions or comments on any of the changes I'm recommending, please go ahead and state them. Okay, so moving on. On section 7160 A and B. Actually, I covered these already in the previous slide, so I'll move on to the next recommendation. Section 71.70, which provides a standalone definition of a loaded firearm. We recommend moving it to the dedicated definition section in chapter 71, which is section 71.20. We recommend adding it as a new subsection D, inserting it in the definition section simply to consolidate and simplify, consolidate similar provisions and to simplify the chapter.
Can I ask a question on the definition of loaded firearm? Is that taken from elsewhere in the Guam code, a similar definition? The reason I ask that is this a common definition in any other portion of the criminal code, or is it a definition that is taken from another jurisdiction that defines loaded firearm. I think it's a good definition. I was just wondering if there's any correlation to another local statute.
Thank you, Judge Barrett Anderson. That's a good question, and we did not look at it, but we can certainly look to see if it's other loaded firearm definitions within the Guam Code annotated. It might present an issue for courts if there are different definitions.
That's what I was asking. I think it is a good definition. Sometimes when you're dealing with definitions, you might look elsewhere in the code. And perhaps even similar, because it may have been tested or not tested. Otherwise, I think the definition is a good one. But thank you for answering my question.
Thank you, Judge Barrett Anderson. Again, we'll look at that and report back if there are any significant differences. So again, that's simply to relocate basically the definition of loaded firearm and put it into the definitions section of the chapter. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I have a question, just following up on that. Have we reviewed the source material for why there's a distinction between the firearm and the firearm in school zones? Why? Just going off if that is the definition, is that something?
We did not look at it for that, but we can.
No, I'm just wondering, curiosity between the definition and the prohibition.
I can say, having been with education for a long time, there, the school does on occasion on searches find unloaded firearms. Sometimes they don't know how children bring it in, but they do, and it's in their lockers. So I can see the legislature wanting to have loaded firearm and an unloaded firearm because they do sometimes exist.
You know, I go quickly, just adding there, I think the federal statute, has another characteristic that we don't have, which is to expel a projectile. In their definition of a loaded firearm. 49 USC 46.5. Something to consider. I mean, we don't require that it says to expel a projectile.
Would that be like a BB gun?
No, it has everything else, you know, they have charged powder, everything, but they have that one phrase that we don't seem to have in ours, which is to expel a projectile. Ours is fine with the bond, it just simply says it's loaded with this. It doesn't have that. Well, it's actually fine. It doesn't have that, yeah, exactly, the action clause. It's kind of an action clause, right, to expel a projectile. I think ours is simply what's inside. What's inside the device, it's not its operational ability. Anyway, just throwing that out there.
Maybe a quick clarification to the judge's question. It's based on, this modification is based on the present statute, present Guam statute, so it's just moving.
It's just moving it.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not adding.
No,
it's
it was
just
just moving it.
It was moving it,
Moving to the definitional area.
but they wanted to add something. And it was
What are the words again?
to expel projectile.
Expel.
Explode through explosive means. It's a-
So can you lay out what fact patterns that would cover that this doesn't cover?
Well, I mean, it's loaded, but it doesn't, there's no firing thing. It won't fire. It won't fire. So you can have a gun. That's why the feds have design to convert to expel a projectile through an explosive that has a cartridge or detonator. I'm just. More,
It's a broader, it adds more to
well,
the,
it's kind of an action, it's an operational, functional issue, functional definition as opposed to this, ours is a descriptive, it's loaded. I mean, that's the fact pattern. You have a gun, it's loaded, but the firing. Won't fire. No, it doesn't, but I'm just saying, he's asking what's the, what would be a fact pattern, I'd say. You know, they took out the spring, they took out the spring on the.
I think that would be taken care of by definition of a firearm, which means capable of firing. And that wouldn't be a firearm.
Right, but I'm just saying, a loaded fire, like the definition.
I think we're fortunate that we've got two chief prosecutors here and.
Depending on what side you are, I mean, we like it the way it is now that we're not over there.
And again,
I'm
and
sure
again,
John would join in, I just,
it will refer the chapter to Attorney Joe McDonald subcommission. He's got GPD as a member of it, and so they'll be able to provide some.
That's true.
Yes.
Question.
Sure.
I thought the gun-free zones was, struck by the Supreme Court.
I looked at that. There is a federal gun-free school zone act, and it actually is much more broad than.
yes, yes.
It covers, I think, 500 to about.
Away from school.
And it has been challenged on a couple of grounds. I'm not exactly sure. I don't recall exactly what. But it's still there.
So do
Some parts have been struck down, but the Guam statute is very narrowly tailored. And in looking at the law that enacted it, and the bills that preceded the law. It received a lot of testimony and it was cut down. The expansive zone, school zone had a much more broad definition initially. And then they brought it back into the actual school, the property that the school sits on.
There's a senator that introduced it, and I needed to narrow it. I thought 1,000 was just on an island of only 209 square miles. I thought 1,000 was too large, and we specifically narrowed it down to the 500.
People like that.
Right,
Yeah,
Right up to the school.
Kind of good now.
Yeah.
So we think this is enforcement.
Yeah, it's still, it has been. Once again, they're not recommending a change to the language, they're just recommending movement.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Next. Gary, are you there? There you go. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're now on section 71.80. And the change here is simply to remove the deadlines that were imposed in the original law. These deadlines have long since passed and now can be revoked from the permanent law. Next slide, please. This is another consolidation type of recommendation. But we have section 71.81, 71.82, and 71.83. These three sections exempt peace officers, military, certain security guards, and an existing shooting range from the prohibitions in this chapter 71. The changes we are recommending here are simply to consolidate these similar provisions and simplify the chapter. But we're not recommending any changes to the substance of any of the sections. We're just consolidating them into a single section as different subsections. Next slide, Jerry. Okay, so we're now on a new chapter, chapter 80, the disposition of offenders. Our subcommission is now doing a deep dive into this chapter 80 as it contains many procedural provisions. In addition, the stuff that this chapter 80 required review by enforcing agency. This is a really big chapter. When it was enacted in 1976, it contained 5 articles. It now contains 7 articles, and it's been extensively updated by the legislature at the time. We'll work closely with other subcommissions and with their specific member agencies in working sessions on the review of this chapter and the different articles here. And we will report back to the plenary commission on this chapter at a later date. Moving on to chapter 81. Next slide, please. Reduction of sentence. This chapter 81 was not part of the original criminal correction code. It was adopted in 1980 by Public Law 15-116. Last amended fairly recently in 2022 by Public Law 35-103. We are recommending that it be referred to the Subcommission on Drug and Other Criminal Offenses for review and comment by the Director of Practice, member of that commission. The chapter 81 provides for reduction of sentences by work credit. It's a very short chapter consisting of a relatively small section, one section. Because it involves sentences, we believe it would be a good fit in Article 1 of Chapter 80, which contains sections regarding sentences. Note that Chapter 80, which I spoke about under the previous slide, is disposition of offenders. Article 1 is general provisions, and it contains many different sections, as I said, including on sentence.
Like an article 2, like chapter 80.
And so yes, in the next recommendation, it would be to move this chapter 81 to a new subsection, I'm sorry, to a new section 80.23 of 9 Guapo annotated with some minor clarifications. So if you see here, we're just renumbering it from 18 to 10 to bring it into chapter 80. And we would add reduction of sentences to the title to enhance the title, to give it a better description.
We're on page 10 of 20. So they're just recommending movement and then changing the word which is to including, and then provide to ensure.
Right. Minor changes for clarification. Next slide, please, Barry.
Page 11.
Can you go up, Jerry, one more time? Okay. So the change here is to subsection F. This subsection, we feel, fits better in the driving while impaired section of the Safe Streets Act. If you notice the section, which by the way was added well after the original law was enacted. This section was added in the year 2000. The law was enacted in 1980, I believe, 20 years later or before. Looking at subsection F, by the specific inclusion of a person convicted for the first time of driving under the influence, an argument can be made that other offenses are excluded. By moving this subsection F to the appropriate D, driving while intoxicated section in the Safe Streets Act, it will hopefully remove any ambiguity in this regard. Therefore, we recommend repeal and reenactment of 9 Bunkwood annotated section 81.10 F to 9 Bunkwood annotated section 92104 F with the suggested amendment here.
I couldn't even do that, just under the compiler's authority to reorder.
Pretty much. Jerry, you want to address that?
Derek?
I'm not sure you can hear me, but there are changes that can be made by the compiler under title title 1 of the Bunkwood annotated. But we're actually recommending a amendment of the language.
To make it so that,
Right.
to make it so that the legislature is going to clearly say it's not just applicable to DUI.
Got it. So
Otherwise,
it'll put the substance of the law into the Safe Streets Act and refer first offenders to the reduction in sentences.
Okay. So there's change to the substance of the language as well.
it clears up the ambiguity of whether it's DUI.
And again, this is a section that will be reviewed by the Director of Purchase who might have, do you have any feelings on this one, Chief?
Yes, I was just mentioning earlier that
you know, what I was informed of is that if the inmate is working outside the prison grounds, they're given, work credit for all of that, but if they're working in the prison grounds, you're not given work credit. There's a disparity, especially some of the tasks or the work that an inmate does, whether it be they have the skill to repair a refrigerator or washers that the inmates are using themselves, right? Or they're for hygiene and all that kind of stuff, or plumbing or any kind of electrical work that some inmates have that skill set. They won't be given work credit when it's inside the city. They'll only be given it when they're detailed outside the city. So that's a disparity. I hope that, you know, it can be considered for modification.
I have a question, so I don't, just practically speaking, first offender has a mandatory minimum of 48 hours. And so if we're assuming these people are in custody and need to meet a 40-hour requirement, I just wonder how that will happen to get credit for getting first offender guidelines in 2 days. So I just wonder, just practically speaking, I recognize that moving it, you know, removes a sort of implied limitation, but just in thinking about it in practice, if they need 5 work days to get 1 day of credit, and they have to be in custody for 5 days.
Good point.
Yeah, that is a good point. Thanks, Bucky, for that. I mean, those are the kinds of comments that I think are very valuable from other the commission, because it draws on your own experiences so that we can question the statute and improve it where it's necessary. So
Second offender has a 7-day.
Right.
Some people don't do the 40 hours. Some people are. Within a day, or the BNR, right? Then there's no time.
Yeah, but even if they're sentenced under a first offender plea, it's 2 days. So they will never get 5 days to get 40 hours. Because it says it has to be in custody, any person in custody. Yeah, that should be changed. I mean, a lot of these sort of work details, you report to where you're gonna be doing the work. You don't go to DOC and then have them take you if you're a first offender, DUI and other jurisdictions. You're not going to jail, you're going to work.
This is currently in the books now, right? So I don't think it's even live. But it's not interfering with the current quote now.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not being used, right? If there was, as John saying, if there was a way, I had a client who I could send to a work detail as part of an anticipated.
Rather than.
And then he satisfies his 40 hour minimum, rather than which, that, you know, that might be closer to what was intended in it when this was added, but. Just a thought, even if we move it, I don't see it having any practical value.
yes, I recognize that now. But yeah, any comments, if you could write them up and send them to us to participate.
So what's gonna happen at the end of this meeting is we're logging down what questions the members have now. The ones that are not questioned, I'm gonna ask to vote to move to the final reading file at the end of the 18 months left. The sections that you have questions that you're raising now, which is fine, we're gonna table for the next subdivision. So that's obviously one thing to do. And we do encourage it because the subcommissions are deep diving into their particular sections and they're getting, sometimes don't get the outside perspective, which is what we need. So we'll table that one.
Next slide, please, Jerry.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, we're now on to loss and restoration of rights incident to conviction or imprisonment. The only suggested change here is to remove this unnecessary language from 820A, if and only. I'll note that in some of your packets, I inadvertently deleted or struck through the word so long. I shouldn't have done that. The word so long should remain, so.
Okay.
And also correct a typo In 82.25D. The word B should be bin. And we verified this by looking at the original criminal correction code. It'll make a lot more sense for them. Next slide, please. This is chapter 84, Rehabilitative and Development Program. This chapter 84 was not part of the original criminal correctional code. It was adopted in 1992 and it has not been amended since. We're going to recommend referral to the subcommission of drug and other criminal offenses. As it, this chapter substantively affects the Department of Corrections. We're recommending a couple of minor changes here. To section 84.15 subsection B. Removing the unnecessary language before being dispersed to. And also in B2, the word client should have been changed to the word inmate. So this is the rest of the section. We'll make the same correction throughout the chapter.
We're on page 14 now, 14 of the time.
Feedback from correction or is corrections or the committee that's looking at corrections. Just wondering why this isn't placed in corrections. It's inmate compensation and distribution of income received. Yeah, that way the topic where do you think you go to correction?
Right. And a lot of that's sort of for lots of the chapters that we're reviewing. So what we are doing is we're assisting the other subcommittee because of the law. Title 9 chapters and so to kind of alleviate the work on the other subcommissions before we get really into Title 8 procedure code, we're doing our review of the chapter 9 Title 9 chapters that were assigned to us, and we'll work with the other subcommissions so that we can move the Title 9 chapters along with the market.
So when this comes to the committee that Fred and I are on, we might discuss about actually absorbing it into
Yes.
correction.
Right.
So what the procedure is we held on is the subcommission that is referring is going to send a formal letter to the other subcommission. You have until the next plenary meeting to either recommend what you want to do with it, or if you don't, it's a pass and it's going to go through as presented. So you have until the next plenary meeting to provide your input.
And that's probably why a lot of the changes that our subcommission is recommending are not really substantive. They're basically just around to simplify and clarify, meeting outdated requirements. But the real review should be done by the subcommissions with the enforcing agencies.
I had some concern about what's on page 12. I again submitted an email to discuss it. I'm just not gonna read this the same way or I'm being 100%.
Go ahead.
So currently, I think the law, we've generally understood that someone can vote in a general or primary as long as they're not typically being held at VOC. And striking that language proposed, I'm just not sure if that's gonna give it the same impression to every judicial officer. Because I think it may open it up to an argument that you can't vote as long as you're on probation or parole. If you have a suspended sentence that includes imprisonment, even if it's suspended, and you'd have to be unconditionally discharged from probation or parole prior to gaining the right to vote again. So I'm not sure if anybody sees any argument that would be the case in this, or if we would all still just be on the same page that the person can vote as long as they're not typically in jail.
I don't really know.
I'm glad. I mean, there's not even the argument currently, and now it looks like. What does it mean to be committed under a sentence of imprisonment? Does that include a suspended term? Because it does contemplate imprisonment.
What page you got?
Nice. Well,
the DQ, you know. You can serve the board.
This would be section 82.
82.20 subsection A. All right, if there is a question, then it will be tabled.
Read in our committee.
Yeah. So it doesn't even have people have to get out of jail so they can go vote in your courtroom.
And Brian Edison is also ex officio on our.
Oh, good, yeah, I'll take it.
So
Some close votes.
he's been asking. similar-
Oh, I didn't.
I'll make sure.
So, just to be aware, if anybody has a request to table. You can show us to that subdivision meeting to address your concern. Or present it to Brian.
Brian Scott, yeah. absolutely.
It's a good point.
Right. It's fair. We appreciate the viewpoint of perspective. Okay, so
Jerry, can you go on to the next slide, please? We're now in section 84.20. And again, the changes here are simply to remove long past deadlines. In part A, in part B, there is a misnumbered section. Section 84.02 should actually be 84.15. I believe this was the original section renumbered by the compiler in 1990. So, but not changed in this section, so it was an oversight, and the compiler could actually fix this.
your last one, your last one.
Okay, next slide, please, Jerry. On the territorial parole board. This chapter 85 was part of the original criminal correctional code. And it has been amended most recently in 2017. Yeah, this one will definitely have to be reviewed by the Subcommission of Drug and Other Criminal Offenses. Which has Department of Corrections. And the chief parole officer has been rather actively involved in the review, helping the review with that subcommission. We should also be reviewed by the Director of Corrections and the parole board. Pending feedback, we recommend a change to section 872. These are relatively minor changes simply to simplify the language in this section.
Do you want to change the word prisoner?
We also did that in the committee. We have an inmate detainee.
Okay,
There is a definition of prisoner only because everywhere in the code. Prisoner,
Oh,
and prisoner is defined as inmate or detainee.
No.
I know the other section you guys are thinking. But.
We wanted to get rid of prisoner, but we realized that in the correctional code, it's everywhere.
everywhere, yeah.
So we have to leave it.
It's all, you guys entertain like making it clear by leaving parole.
we can consider that along with the DOCO subcommission.
Our
Maybe that
only
makes more
concern is-
sense here.
As the judge pointed out, the statutes. Have somehow settled on a definition, the prisoner includes two. Which is detainee and.
And inmates.
Yeah, don't want to mess with that. We could
Yeah, but it's not,
create another thing.
isn't this dealing with parole?
Yeah, I thought about it. Anyway, this suggestion.
There. Perfect, it's for one.
It goes over to Joko.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't even need to be defined if it's just parole week, right?
We'd also like to know that the amount of money, the $25 that we provided to the parolee,
When you get released.
hasn't been changed. Six or parole might want to consider increasing that.
That price would change, that's.
I still will point out.
And only bias.
What is the date of its enactment? That's 76.
That's a stroll, right?
That's probably 200.
I think stroll might charge you 25, I think.
25,
But yeah, that's a month.
Free soft tacos.
okay. Moving on, next slide, please, Jerry. Okay, so we have here chapters 86 and 87. Both of these chapters were moved to different. Annotated. 86 was actually renumbered by Public Law 27-138. To 8 Wampum annotated chapter 160.
That's the criminal injuries compensation.
Right, yes, so you'll probably want to take a good look at that one too, Your Honor. But it's with the actually, it's with the criminal procedure subcommission, so we'll make sure to refer to you.
Environment.
Yes, yes,
Please.
yes. And 87 is victim notification. This was actually repealed and then reenacted as chapter 160 in title 8. So it's still there. A references to chapter 7 were kept by the compiler of laws in 2004, simply so that readers would know where to look for them. But in fact, safely removed now since it's been such a long time.
Why would this be one thing? What?
But so the readers would know where to go. And the courts would know where to go. Lovely. Lovely. Next slide, please, Jared. Chapter 88 of the Criminal Justice Substance Abuse Act. It was not. Criminal and Correctional Code was added in 1995 by Public Law 23-60. We're going to be referring this to the Subcommission on Drug and Other Criminal Offenses. We will also be referring this to prosecution, probation, and behavioral health for review and comment. Then in feedback, the change that we recommend would be to delete in its entirety section 88.60. This is a reporting requirement that has long since passed.
On and before 1996.
Next slide, Jared. Okay, if I could ask you to go to the last paragraph here. I actually misplaced this paragraph. It should belong in it belongs in the prior slide. But it's to note that our subcommission will be working with the local subcommission to determine whether section 88.40B, which requires punitive sanctions against offenders testing positive for alcohol and controlled substances, might raise due process issues if testing results in false positive. We'll report back to the Plenary Commission. So moving on to chapter 89 on the same slide. It was not part of the original criminal correction code. It was added in 1992 by Public Law 25-72 and has been amended several times. The chapter contains many mandates for many different entities, DOC, parole, probation, DPD, and judiciary. It also contains the electronic monitoring provisions, which is near and dear to our chairman's heart. So we'll be referring these to those entities for review and and we'll report back to the commission of the later time. Next slide, please, Jared. Chapter 93 is a criminal sexual conduct assessment and rehabilitation act. It's not part of the original criminal correction code. It was added in 2020 by Public Law 35-71. We'll refer this to the subsequent Joe subcommission and crimes against persons and the DOCO subcommission for review and comment. We'll also refer this to probation and behavioral health for review and comment. We will be discussing in working sessions whether section 93.30 requiring assessment of convicted sex offenders might raise due process issues for individuals who are found to not be independent, but not having an affordable assessment of treatment options available to them. We'll report back to the commission.
This is the criminal section inventory or something.
Mandatory assessments.
It's part of your coverage. You know, my understanding, this happens automatically in criminal sexual conduct in the states.
Yeah. Not get back to the- So, next slide, please, Jerry. Any further discussions? We recommend the following change. And it's simply to delete subparagraph C here. The language in C is already contained almost exactly in subsections A and B, and it's not necessary. It's repetitive and redundant. So unless there are questions, this will conclude our presentation of the Title IX chapters that were assigned to our subcommission. We'll continue to review the chapters that I've noted that will be referred to other subcommissions and other entities, and we'll get back to commission.
All right, I want to thank the, I'm sorry, Jessica, did you have anything to add before I?
No, Mr. Kwan, thank you. Mr. Kinga did an excellent job. Thank you.
I want to thank that subcommission, Jessica and Mr. Executive Director, for the hard work you've done. It's been, what I'd like to present to the plenary commission now is the following, and this will be provided at the start of the next meeting as well. We were just getting into it this round. I want everyone to understand what we've gone through with this subcommission. Please bear with me, I'm doing this for the record. This subcommission has recommended no change, 71.10, no change. 71.20 amendment, but it's tabled. 71.30 amendment, 71.40, no change, 71.50, no change. 71.60 amendment, 71.61 amendment, 71.70 amendment, 71.80 amendment, 71.81 amendment, 71.82 amendment, 71.83 amendment, 71.90, no change. 81.10, repeal and reenact, which is tabled as well. Further discussion. 82.10, no change. 82.15, amend. 82.20, amend. 82.25, no change. 84.10, no change. 84.15, amend. 84.20, amend but table. 84.25, all the way to 85.68, no change. 85.72, amend. 93.30, amend. They cover all those sections in depth review. And what's contained in the packet is what they've suggested to repeal, amend, or repeal and reenact. Or leave it alone. Well, I listed everything. If they didn't cover it, we'll have to do that. So other than what was tabled specifically at the request of members, which is 71.20, request to be tabled. So 81.10, request to be tabled. And 84.20, request to table. At this point, I'm going to make a motion to accept the recommendations to be moved to, so that those sections can be moved to the final reading file, which we will address in the last 2 months of the commission. Is there a motion?
Is it, can we discuss?
Sure.
I really appreciate that we were given an opportunity to review proposed amendments, repeal and reenact, but I wonder, especially given that we just met quorum, is there any interest in putting these types of actions at one plenary meeting with this list, and then taking the vote at the next subsequent meeting, just to put on the table? Because while I was able to review what was proposed for amendment, I don't know that I look at every, for example, one parole board statute, but for future more substantive statutes like the disposition of offenders, if we had some type of breakout like this, and the time to consider it.
We can.
Yeah.
However, it would bleed into
2 years.
into that session's, the upcoming session's presentation. Unfortunately, we've only been given a 2-year time frame. We lost 2 months because of Mulbar. So if the Plenary Commission wishes to do so, that can be done. If we do so, based on our calculation, it's gonna bleed into that next session's presentation.
I think the statutes that we're gonna retain have been rezoned. I completely trust the subcommittee that did it, and I don't didn't necessarily go back from, but given the members that aren't here, as well as some substantive chapters that are coming up, that would be something I would propose in the future. And that's what I wanted to kind of. I didn't see the chart before.
I haven't provided it yet.
Oh,
I would like to suggest that, if this passes, it's going over to the committee of that the chief and I are on that is acting chair. We can put on the list of when we're meeting for the deep dive into the areas. I think there must be at least 5 or 6 referrals from this particular committee to the DOCO committee. And we welcome you to attend that if you like.
I'm really interested in the disposition chapter, so I wanted to make sure I brought up.
Did that go to the DOCO?
Oh, no, yeah, I think
Yes,
that
it
was.
did.
It did?
Yeah.
Okay, it did.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
So, I will just remind Jerry to put you on the list and we're gonna be meeting for it. Sure.
That's one of the chapters that was.
I'll take a deeper dive. We're trying to clear as much off the table as we can before we get to some of the more contentious sections, which I anticipate can be more personal. Right. So at this point, given what I said, this point of information, but anybody, is there a motion to accept what they recommended, other than those 3 sections that are taken?
Point of order.
Yes.
Did you put on the agenda that we would be voting on this today?
It's a, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, you did. Yes. And this is not a final acceptance. Yeah, this is just.
No,
They're putting it to the final voting file. At the very back.
not yet. No.
Did you read it?
I thought you made the motion. I'll second.
Excuse me, I didn't mean this agenda in the newspaper.
It's same, it's same.
Really?
That's why he's. Okay. We may make a motion to accept this as, other than those 3 secondary. Mr. Anchor, you make the motion?
Make the motion that we move the recommended amendments into the reading the recommendations and no changes to.
And the recommendation repeal.
And I'm sorry, and the recommendations of to.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of this one?
Eh,
Any opposed? There being none, do note that we have 9 now. Attorney Tenorio has appeared by Zoom and she's been on for the past 30-45 minutes. Welcome in. Okay, so at this point, those sections that the subcommission did present have been moved, except for those 3, which should be moved to table for next week. Thank you very much for the work. Mr. Danko, I believe his commission is.
We have enough time, we'll go through it, but that's the end, I guess. So Jerry can pull up the subcommittee of times relating to property. Okay, thank you. Again, I want to thank our members, Randy and Monty and Buck, working on this. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I know we're up against time and it's 1 o'clock now. This slide is on so the chapters that we were assigned. Completed, reviewed, that's chapter 32, chapter 34, 37, 40, 43, 46, 47, and 48 are Title IX. And the chapters that we still have to get to are chapter 4, general principles of liability. We thought we should put that off because may require a little more thinking. As well as chapter 13, the inchoate crimes, contempt, solicitation, conspiracy. And our remaining substantive chapters of 49, 69, and 7. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Gary, please. Thank you. Next, okay. All right, what you see here is the theft statute, chapter 43. We recommended amendments to the grading values of the offense. As you know, the existing statute, if you commit any of the forms of theft and the value between $0 and $49, that's a petty misdemeanor. 50 and 1 cent, in excess of 50 to 499, that's a misdemeanor. Existing is for third degree felony is in excess of 500 to just under 1,500, and of course, second degree felony would be in excess of $1,500. The value of that. So the recommendations we were. As you know, we believe these offenses are from these grading values are from the 1970s. So we're trying to update it. And our best guide in trying to figure out values was, do we want someone that's charged with stealing a cell phone to be a felon? Because we thought that was a way to guide us, and we wanted it. Because, you know, these cell phones are easily $1,000 or above. So what we're proposing, a recommended change, is that misdemeanor will be a value between 0 to 499, misdemeanor 500 to 2,499, third degree felony 2,500 to 4,999, and a second degree felony to greater than 5,000. For theft and the related offenses there, so.
Point of probation, if I can point out, it's gotta be equal to or greater than. For the fact that.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's right, that should be equal to. Good point.
It's still just 5,000.
That's right, equally, good catch, that should be equal to,
I think keyboard doesn't have that.
yeah.
Underline.
The equal to, good catch, equal to or greater than 5,000, I just put the equal sign in mine, on my chart. It was just numbers that we were kind of using. What are the common things that our clients have stolen or charged with and allegedly or were convicted of, and so. And we figured that this would be subject to people wanting to put input into it. People might want to go back and lower it, they might want to increase it. We just thought, let's start with something that our little subcommittee could agree on. So.
It also comes close to the fines for the different grading.
Yeah, and we try to kind of match.
I guess I'm coming at it a couple of ways, right? One is,
You're invited to the next meeting.
I need to have my own. First of all, you know, the second degree, and I forget, it's what, a 5-year sentence? I don't know.
It's maximum 5, but it's mandatory minimum 5 years if it's your second, if you have a felony.
Yeah, so you're talking about sending somebody to jail for 5 years for stealing $2,000 worth of stuff. Right.
Well, right now we that's.
I know.
Right now we do that for $500.
I'm getting more than a sort of like, this is what I'm thinking in terms of deterrence anyway. The other thing is, have we done a survey of states, how they approach this?
No, we didn't really do that, especially since we were kind of pressed for time. We just wanted to get a discussion going and, you know, this might require someone wanting to be, it wasn't empirical, okay? It was based on,
No, I get it.
you know, Randy and I represent at least 70 years of together of being in the criminal justice system.
Are you gonna?
You know, I mean, in our committee, right?
Yeah,
You know, he's 40, my 30. You know, Randy's, so, you know, it's.
No, I'm just saying that.
It's not as empirical as people would like. Yes, I'll admit that.
I think it needs to be changed, but I'm just saying, you know, if we're thinking about this in a rational way. We want to make.
Yeah,
talk about in terms of deterrence and then maybe a survey of how other states.
or a survey of what other states are doing. A lot of them haven't changed it, but rather than, yeah, we just didn't dive that deep into it. That might be one way empirically, is to survey the 50 states and territories. Of course, they use, some of them are what, A, B, C, D, E felonies and that. So.
Are you requesting?
Well, I mean, if it's gonna be,
Yeah, we can take.
it looks arbitrary.
It
It is.
kind of is.
Yeah.
It's the Phil and Randy arbitrary scale, but
Based on 70 years.
but I use the cell phone, guys, so you know.
No, I think it needs to be changed again. I'm just, what's the?
And
we're gonna defend
you
it.
are invited to. Really, committee. We're gonna table this one. All right, next slide. We're gonna get ready. Table. No, I want Joe, I want to report. Not just 50 days. Table for you, sir. Next slide, this is still in chapter 43 theft. We recommended in basically in subsection A3 of 43.31 on the crimes against community special obligation, there's just one alternative element. If you look below for the strikeout, or does so for a purpose other than the original purpose for which the property of services were to be provided. We believe that that's vague and ambiguous and unconstitutional in its face. And so we just recommend deleting that because that just what's whatever I think is another a purpose other than an original purpose.
I just dabbled into this actually quite a bit. Have we checked to see if it's been struck? Because this language still exists in New Jersey and that is actually has been used recently.
No, we didn't check to see if New Jersey struck it. We just thought that we should strike it because not everybody, not every jurisdiction is as constitutionally sensitive as we are. So we just thought that it looked really vague and ambiguous on the plain face of it.
What was the purpose of New Jersey's?
I think this was New Jersey too, by the way.
What was it based on the It's all NPC. I
Yeah.
recognize the language.
Most of it's NBC.
Yeah. And I just looked at a
Well,
case
even
where
But even, you know, the NBC is not infallible, so.
no,
you know,
but I think we need as many corrections. as we can get, right?
Well,
You know what the purpose of New Jersey was?
No, they didn't even think it was okay. It hasn't been, as far as I can tell. The fact that
Still there.
it's still there, and the case that I looked at actually relied on this language.
What was the basis of the usage in that case?
I'd rather not discuss.
Okay.
you know, it's like, it's a catch. And. The two guys and, you know, three, we just thought on the space of the vague and ambiguous to us, and how would I explain that to a client? So that's our recommendation, but I mean, Joe, you bring up a good point, we can table that, or
Can you give us
further discussions? We table that one too.
We're gonna get the case.
Yeah, we'll table that one too.
And this is strictly a government.
Yeah.
Owned, leased, or borrowed property. I can see why 3 is there because it's the government and the government likes to have a catch-all. But my judicial hat says.
Yeah, oh, and that's kind of where we were at in our little subcommittee, so, but we'll table that one further discussion. And by special invitation, we're no longer special.
Mandatory invitation. What's the case?
Okay, let's go to, can we go to the next slide?
Giving this case.
402 New Jersey, super 17.
New form was 402 New Jersey sub 177.
Super.
Super. Sorry.
Super.
177. Yeah. Okay, thank you, David. I will stay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was a reporter.
Maybe if we read the context, it probably makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Just take this parade by itself. Right, it sounds like constitutional, but I think you have to read the whole statute in context.
We read the whole thing. I mean, there are always policies embedded or applied in some sense.
It's just a matter of usage.
Yeah. Um, Okay, we're on slide 6. Okay, we're up to chapter 37 on burglary. What's that? Go ahead. Okay, so the only thing that we at least references is that we just wanted to make sure there was a reference to the section, proper section and title. The balanced approach restorative justice process that is found in Title 19. Okay. Next slide.
Let's see,
Unless anybody had-
let's see, about 3720, is that right?
Yeah, to amend it, I'm sorry, to amend it to include the citation. Where's that law at? Next slide.
Thirty-seven forty. Page
3740, yeah, page 7.
32.
We're recommending repeal of this crime called the breaking of window glass to gain access to vehicles. But we thought it was that this language is already covered, it's duplicative, it's already covered by burglaries. Specific statutory language that prescribes burglarizing vehicle. That's section 37.20. And it's our experience and my experience that it's never been charged. So
It has been charged as a point. It has been charged maybe 3 times. But quick point, I know this is not my committee, but just something to think about. We had always talked about here in the AG's office that you can break the window to a vehicle and it's a felony, but if you break the window to a house, that's not a crime. So maybe we want to set something like that there, where if we can't charge burglary because you didn't enter, but you threw something into someone's house and shattered their window, it should replace this maybe.
but the burglary statute includes a vehicle, so how you gain entry would be covered by it as in addition to, criminal mischief. But I'm surprised, I never knew we had someone charged, at least I don't recall someone charging them. We charge burglary if they broke the glass to break the steel or whatever's inside the car, right? You can charge a burglary, you can charge theft, you can charge a criminal property mischief. Why do we need a specific breaking of window glass to gain access?
I agree. I think that the only reason why it was charged is because it's a 3rd-degree felony and burglary is a 2nd-degree felony. So it's for purposes of pleading out and plea negotiations.
But if you're breaking a glass on a car, right? It's criminal mischief to a vehicle, which is going to be found. You have that capability.
That's what I'm saying, that we think the criminal mischief, the burglary statute and the theft statute covers them from, 3rd-degree felony and up, so.
I agree.
It's criminal mischief of the car, so he's throwing a brick through it and then walking away. I mean, it just makes it more.
But you would stack.
Anyway,
It's stacked, right?
do we want to table this or do you want to? I mean.
No, I think it should be removed.
Okay,
So
so
we're gonna do- let's see the one.
next slide.
Let's repeal on that.
Come on, it's not talking. Oh, wait, you're not there. Wasn't me either. Next one, we should do it, slide page 8. Yeah, so we're recommending, adding, should have been underlined, right? It was the language, 3728, that's the last clause, where's that here?
Starts at, or if
Was abandoned. Starts at, or if the person, it should have been underlined, sorry about that, folks. To show the amendment.
We do have it underlined on the balance. But yeah.
Oh, okay, it's not, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my own. So in the red, yeah, we wanted to just add that other description of the affirmative defense, that's all.
So underline is, or if the person reasonably believed that he or she owned, leased, rented, in other words, licensed to enter and remain in the habitable property, building or a separately secured or occupied portion thereof, for the school motor vehicle, semi-trailer, trailer, truck, tractor, vehicle combination, motor bus, motor truck, or vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the comment discussion slide 9.
White school in there.
I think we were just tracking the language of, you know, when they amended to include, cars and. Remember burglary traditionally didn't have the cars included, and then they started, to expand it, so we just wanted to cover all the bases.
So you can start looking, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I'm just looking at the addition, and it has school, but I'm looking up. For the sort of district remains.
It's that school there.
Yeah, it's in a different clause, but it's in the top.
It's in the top,
It's the same language.
it's the same, yeah.
You
It's just the list.
simplified it.
Copy them.
So what you're proposing to do is add
Yeah.
an additional affirmative defense.
Yeah, the amendment.
Does this exist in other jurisdictions, or we're just going off of our 70 years?
Office, I believe.
Because
we want the jury instruction. Your Honor, the jury instruction is from 37.20A. Because the facts of my case are
Because isn't this already
that you know,
isn't this already swept into a mental state defense?
yeah, yeah.
Depending on the
Broad, right?
But I like the jury to get an instruction besides just my argument that, you know, it's not, he doesn't have the intent or knowing, so.
Your defense now. Right, next one.
It's balanced.
I agree.
But your point, is you cover it there too. Okay, we recommend deletion of subsection 34.68. Clarify punishment is based on offense grading value only. And you'll see what we recommended again. Nothing empirical. But we can always table this too, if folks want something more empirical, like a survey of the 50 states and 4 territories.
When's the last time Christine, when's the last time we charged arson?
Recently, last week, actually.
Actually,
Actually, in 2023 alone, there have been more arsons than in the past 3 years.
yeah,
But lots of before the night chart, on my way back.
but yeah, I mean, it's a good point to survey what
Are you somebody requesting the table?
The criminal mischief suggestion that we're clarifying, these amounts are not involved in regular criminal mischief. These are the insurance amounts, I think. Because for regular criminal mischief, we just have to prove you intentionally damage property of another with no reference to the value.
This just goes to the punishment, the punishment and the offense grading. So what are you charging out? A misdemeanor criminal mischief or felony criminal mischief or arson?
Right, but I think what I'm saying is because there's always a misunderstanding here, even in the office. These amounts do not matter for regular criminal mischief. This is the one where I think if you do it for insurance purposes, that's the only time you use these amount ranges. Otherwise, you can damage any property of another, and it's always going to be a misdemeanor unless it's a car.
It's a car. The car, that's true. That's true. Good point. So
Christine, are you asking to table?
No, I don't necessarily disagree with it, but it's not used anyway. We never charge the subsection that has anything to do with the grading value.
I can see when it would be done. I just, like you, don't recall when it has ever been done. Okay.
Right.
You request the table on that.
Okay,
You've done your work.
okay, so let's go to slide 10, but appreciate the input. But that's true. Okay, page 10, we're still on arson, which is burning criminal mischief chapter. The subcommittee just recommended deletion of the minimum mandatory 48 hours jail and fines for first, second, third, subsequent general setting. In other words, if you're charged with a misdemeanor, charge with a misdemeanor charge, whatever the general punishment is for misdemeanor, that's what you're subject to. And that was our. And the other point was about that subsection C, that became a discussion regarding joint civil liability for parents. And we, majority came out that let it stay, or recommend leaving it there. Okay. Any comments? Page 11. Still on arson negligent burning. This is regarding the definition of owner. Oh, yeah, to add Department of Land Management, if you want to go through the statute, it restricted it to Department of Revenue Taxation, but you can also be terminal owners through the Department of Land Management.
So you're suggesting an amendment just to language or the Department of Land?
Yeah,
Management?
that's all.
The amendment, just to add that.
To add that. Yeah, it doesn't show up in the printout. Underline.
You can't afford a vote.
Sorry. Not. Want to upgrade to the color one, right? Okay, page 12, it's still an arson. Recommend amending the punishment at section 34.70I for consistency with the general punishment for misdemeanor crime. So just simply just basically say the misdemeanor punishable by not the you need a mandatory minimum. Or I mean
Any comments or discussion?
page 13, new chapter 46. This is forgery, fraudulent practice and telephone records. We're recommending repeal of sections 46.90 to 46.94. This chapter is about prohibition on use of telephone records. He thought it was obsolete and an unused statute, and really don't know of an occasion when someone is coming in and finding a ball and telephone records.
What's the actual fact pattern?
I think it's when the if you get a printout of the of someone's telephone bill, or they get a hold of their caller ID. Remember how these are the portable caller IDs? I mean, we're trying to figure out how did this statute work. Because I don't remember ever charging it.
It's from the times when telephones.
And, you know, and people would get a printout or a bill, a paper bill of their calls, you know, so. You just don't hear about that or see that anymore, but I've never seen it charged out, but we didn't really quite understand how the statute works, because none of us had ever seen it charged out or how it's worked. It might have been relevant for the time, late 90s and the early odds, but I don't know. I defer to anybody who knows about this.
I think so. I don't think we've ever charged this. However, I can see a fact pattern where if somebody works at Docomo or another service provider and they get somebody's cell phone record and give it to someone like a friend, then I think that's how you would be able to use this, because then you don't have consent to give them the records.
Yeah,
Also, I'm looking on the legislature's website, and I see it was added in 2009. That's not that long ago.
right, I know, but we saw that too, but you notice that the context is it talks about the telephone provider throughout that statute, so you know, we just, I mean, yeah, your fact pattern is that someone is unscrupulous at the telephone provider, but you know, that takes GTA, ITV and Docomo turning in their employees and opening themselves up to civil liability. I don't see it doing it, but whatever. If you guys want to table this one for further, we just didn't get it. as applicable to.
It accepts records created by the service provider. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, so who else is creating this record? That's it.
Other than the telephone company.
It's a little strange. So perhaps more in depth.
It's not meant for the telephone companies themselves.
But telephone,
Exception.
telephone record means a record in written electronic or oral form, except the caller identification record and subscriber list information that is created by a telephone service provider. So it's kind of, it walked back on itself. So as we try to envision that pattern,
Yeah.
it's to fit. It doesn't fit. It's pretty
Doesn't
difficult.
fit.
Yeah, that's.
Christine and Marianne, you want to table this or are you just as confused as we are?
I would want to table this. I do want to table it. I mean, I'm not in a rush to repeal statutes that, might have an applicable back pattern, because then we wouldn't have to send an SDT for these records, because then I think it opens up telephone service providers. They're just gonna be like, never mind, then we have no penalty. So,
It's okay, I don't mind
Yeah, I
tabling
think
it.
we should look into why we even passed this, because it wasn't that long ago. There must have been something behind it. I'm okay with tabling this.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Good, because we admittedly didn't really quite wrap our heads around it. So.
Your input will be greatly appreciated. but
Yeah,
that's
you're
up to
welcome.
the-
Thank you, everybody.
That's good, that 70 years was from 20 years ago.
Okay, so those are tabled.
Okay, page 14, we're still on, again, this is tracking our other similar recommendations that the offense grade values, or this is for dishonored checks. A petty misdemeanor is anything less if you have a dishonored check that's not value at 250. Again, we're just trying to increase these values and nothing empirical.
Yeah, here you have different values compared.
Yeah, I think that we do, this one we do.
And nobody uses check.
Yeah, and nobody uses checks
So we
too.
match this to our recommendations for credit card rating and mortgage fraud. I think it was just to kind of distinguish between the more white collar offenses versus less
Right.
sophisticated offense. property.
Yeah, so we don't mind tabling this, it's just that,
Does anybody have any comments on this other than adding the equal to or greater than 10,000?
for both this and the other gradation, where I can see that petty misdemeanor might be too low for this, the amount here would be too low is if someone's cashing a check or stealing from a mom and pop store, which is a small business, you steal $500 from a mom and pop store, that's a lot of their merchandise because they're only selling, everything there's under $10. So I think it's too low to be a petty misdemeanor if you're trying to affect, or steal from the small business.
okay.
Vulnerable victim then.
Yeah.
No, that wouldn't even be applicable. Vulnerable victim only applies if it's a second degree theft.
Yeah, you have to modify that, or amend that.
Request
Okay,
to
well,
table.
we can table this, values are, I guess, any values you see, they're not empirical. Okay. All right, 15, slide 15. Okay, we're still in chapter 46. We recommend repealing section 46.50, the rigging of public exhibitions. We thought that this statute was more of a for the greyhound, and I think the dog pari-mutuel racing has been out for years. So we didn't see this being applicable anymore, at least in our community. Having this crime, rigging of public exhibitions.
Any comments?
Any comments on 4650?
The request on the recommendation.
Yes, to repeal it.
Repeal. I'm sorry.
Okay, we go to the next slide. 16. We recommend amendment to section 46.35, the use of credit card. We wanted to get in there reference to account numbers for being in the internet age. Account numbers are stolen more than the actual card themselves. Although cards are stolen too, but we wanted to make sure we covered having an account number there.
So, I mean, do we want to just leave it with credit cards or any payment card, any payment device?
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about payment cards. Sure.
And you also have
Debit.
PayPal, which is the same function.
Well, I thought account number covers it. We don't have, we could always strike. I mean, account number of,
Then you have debit cards that are actually
yeah,
more valuable.
yeah, that's good. I mean, what would be a generic term for these accounts?
Is there a
Bank access device.
Is there a definition section that credit card means?
I don't recall seeing that. No, I don't think so. I don't recall seeing that. I'm looking
I
at,
would suggest.
I'm looking at 46.
Anyway, banking.
I think bankers would use something like bank,
yeah, they don't see that.
access device. We use something like that.
Oh, credit card is defined in subsection C.
Yeah,
Another section, right?
credit cards defined in the theft statute, I think 43, right?
But 46.35 sub C, and actually adding the debit card is a good idea because we actually don't charge debit cards because of the way that this is written. So we cannot use this statute for debit cards currently.
You said that was 30.
46.35 subsection C.
Okay, so
Maybe
that's gotta be.
maybe we table this so we can update this language better.
You could take the word credit and just use a card and then define what is a card.
But they want to include PayPal too.
Yeah,
There's
so-
all kinds of emerging devices.
You're absolutely right.
Financial.
Card or telephone.
So we'll table this to get to update the.
Like I said, it's a bank access device. Yeah.
Right.
Financial
I knew-
access device. Financial account. access device. There you go.
Okay, so we'll table that. If you just look at page 17, I'm almost getting there. Again, this is a transcript, our tracks are recommending amendments of the grading values for the fraudulent use of a credit card. But you know what, we're looking at not just credit cards, but other, those accounts or banking devices. Now, there's another one. I mean, what are Apple cards considered?
Those are prepaid. Yeah.
Are they debit? Those debit?
Because you paid for them over free.
Oh,
You paid for them already. It's technically.
Oh, gift card?
Gift
card.
yeah. Gift card, okay.
Store value cards.
Store value cards, right. Okay,
That's right.
does it go to 18?
And they're good for 5 years, right, General?
5 years, in your opinion?
Yes, you're checking it. Cards have no expiration
Yeah,
date.
no expiration.
No expiration, but gift
Gift
card.
card, gift card itself.
Is that a violation of the rule against perpetuities?
Okay, on 18, we recommend, again, it's the same thing, grading, for the impersonation identity theft crime. We thought that grading value should be increased there, but, so we can table that too for anybody who wants input.
That's 4680, right?
Yeah, 4680 for empirical, and the slide 19, the same thing. Regarding mortgage fraud, 46103 grading value, so we can table
This one
that.
should be really high.
We can table that for more discussion.
It should be higher.
Yeah, okay. And finally, 20, our last, it should be our last slide, I think. Is it? Almost. Yeah, one more. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we got 33. Oh, shoot. I got more. It's 33, I thought it was 20. Okay, we recommend repeal of 46.104. It talks about the AG has the right to hire mortgage fraud prosecutors and investigators. We still think it's necessary.
I think realistically, right? As soon as you cheat the bank, you need FDIs and.
Right. So, yeah, repeal that. There's no.
But what was the need for this? He can hire investigators and prosecutors as they.
Yeah, right. We're not sure why this is.
It's gonna give any AG the authority to like start throwing in a new budget. Budget line.
Okay, 21.
How we want. A
Yeah.
mortgage.
Right.
Add more money.
I want to be a mortgage. I'm still in housing. Okay, it's page 21. Still in chapter 46, we recommend amendment to section 46.504, just to strike out, just to leave it at 3rd-degree felony. Okay.
Any comments or objections to that one?
How are you? What are we going to do?
Almost done. Page 23, 22.
We have. Same thing with, yeah, 3rd-degree felony. Strike out, yeah. Just leave it after that. Go 24, please. Which should be the same thing. Strike out, just leave it after 2nd-degree felony. And 20, same thing with, we're just trying to clean it up in 25, all the way, same thing. Okay, we should be on 26, the same thing, slide 26. All the way to, just clean it up, slide all the way up to 28. Slide 28.
That's the same thing, but it's just.
Just cleaning up, so you know, just cleaning up.
I think it's
Access
access
how
how
we
we
get.
one of the 20 is it said felony, but punished in this.
Yeah, that one was kind of confusing, so
That was fine.
we're just cleaning it up. Okay, we're on 29. We're getting there. Okay, this one is financial exploitation of elderly and individuals with disability. We thought repeal it because we think that the following victim sentencing and death statutes are sufficient. Plus, if you read this chapter, they mix the mens rea throughout, you know, they say, well, intentional or negligently, you know. And you can punish the same, so.
Christine?
So the thing about this is this was very recent, 2019. So I would want to look at what the legislature, why they passed this, the legislative intent behind this. But I do agree the mens reas, they're inconsistent. So
They're inconsistent throughout, so yeah.
I couldn't find any legislation, tried to look for the source of it, so we're still trying to figure out where it came from.
Do you agree though that it's covered by the, Christina Marianne, do you agree it's covered by the vulnerable victim statute?
I do not agree actually, and the reason why is because if you look at vulnerable victim, it only attaches to 2nd-degree theft and 3rd-degree robbery. So especially if we change the grading values for the amounts involved, it's not gonna cover people who steal amounts lower than currently lower than $1,500.
Well, then table this and we'd have to go into that statute and start amending that. Plus,
I agree.
I had a hard time with the definition of elderly folks, because they included all kinds of things in there.
Oh, was that one Guam?
I don't know why they have my name in there, but and my mugshots.
Yeah, it looked like this guy.
It looked like this guy. And then you're elderly.
The way
This is standard. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, what I would add is that the way I've seen this statute used in the States is specifically for people that are close to elders. Yeah.
Right.
So it's not just that,
I think that's why they.
and that's why you want a different enhancement, I think, to make it more like, because you have that trust already.
Right,
But it has to be clean because the mens rea is a mess.
right, we'd have to, we could table this and fix it, it's just that. You know, they were saying intentionally or negligent, well, you gotta pick one, you know?
Right, because it actually, so for theft, you have to have unlawful control. This is not unlawful control. This is almost like embezzlement, but from the Manangku. Because if you're embezzling, you have the right to access the money. But here, it's you have the right because you're supposed to be the caretaker, but instead you're it for something else.
Anyway, we can. You know,
There's a lot of this on Guam.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So if we can go to the next slide there, 130,
we're almost there. I think it's 8:30, oh yeah, this is all tabled. All the way through, that's it, I think. Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Oh,
so-
wait, number page 32. There's a chapter 48. We recommend, it talks about notification of breaches of personal information. We think that chapter should be move to the civil side, remove from the criminal code and move to, somewhere in the civil statutes, because there's nothing, doesn't, there's nothing, criminal in there. It's just, no penalties or nothing, it's just,
Well, I'm gonna table that, so you guys can give us a recommendation where to put it.
okay, we'll table that. Chapter 47, we had no proposed amendments for the Trademark Counterfeiting Act. We know that's been used in this work. Robbery, we had no proposed amendments. And I think that's the last one. Yeah, I think that was it. Yep.
Jim, Madam Compiler, if you would please pull up the spreadsheet just so I can go through this. All right, those that can't even see it, I'm just gonna read through for the record what we've gone through with subcommission. So chapter 43 specifically, 4310, 4315, 4320, 4321, 4325, 4330. Has no change. 4331, they're recommending an amendment, but it's been tabled. 4335 to 4340, 4375, no change. Next, chapter 46, 4610, no change. 4615, no change. 4620, no change. 4630, an amendment recommendation table. 4635, amendment recommendation table. 4640, no change. 4645, no change. 4650, repeal, recommended. 4655, no change. 60, no change. 65, no change. 70, no change. 75, no change. 4680 through 4694, all tabled for further discussion. 46100, no change. 101, no change. 102, no change. 46103, amendment recommended, table. 46104, repeal recommended. 46401 to 46503, no change. 46504, amendment recommended. 46505 to 46608, no change. All those sections. Third, chapter 37, burglary, home invasion. 3710, no change. 3720, recommended amendment. 3730, recommended, no change. 3740, repeal. 37210 to 37360, no change. So chapter 34, arson, negligent burning, criminal mischief. 3410 to 3450, no change. 3460, amendment recommended. 3470, amendment recommended. 3480, no change. 3490, no change. Chapter 32, financial exploitation of the elderly, 3210 and 3250, all repeal recommended, all tabled. Right. Chapter 48. Tabled until you give us where you suggest. Chapter 47, no change. Chapter 40, no change. Correct. Anyone have a motion to accept that recommendation to move to the final reading file? It's going to be 18 months. Motion to accept the recommendations. Any second? Any second?
Second.
All in favor of moving that to the final reading file? Aye.
I,
Nothing opposed, it is moved. At this point, I think we have completed a lot of work today, everyone. Thank you very much.
I'd like to request that the chair ask the governor to fill the vacancy in the drug and other crimes offenses. There's also, we have a situation where Gary is acting, and she is a compliant with laws, but you can see that she's doing work with other committees, and for her to chair as acting the joke committee is a lot of burden on her. So I'd like to urge the vacancy to be filled, and we do have a member who has not shown up or shown any interest whatsoever that needs to be replaced. I just saw 6 to 7 areas of Title IX that are referred to JOCO. This committee needs to be strengthened in order to do the work that the chair wants to do.
I agree. We will do something. We'll send another form up there. The business before we continue.
Our next meeting tentatively is scheduled for 25. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for October 5 at noon. It'll be here. We'll let you know if that does not happen, but until then, please plan on October 5. Sherry, can you pull up the next slide? We're back on the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Okay, at this point, moving on to new business. As a reminder to members, the third quarter status reports for the governor, the speaker, and the chief justice are due September 15th. Once we've completed this, we're working feverishly for the third quarter ending September 30th. So we're getting that done right now. The next plenary meeting, as stated before, is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, October 5th. We're going to hear a presentation from, I believe, property, crimes against persons subcommission, as well as DOCO subcommission. I have no communications to present to the plenary commission. Are there any comments from anyone?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think that this is this is actually the first meeting where we've had meaningful discussion and comments reviewed by all of our members, voting members and ex-official members. And I think that it went very well, and I appreciate everybody being here and offering their insight. We have a lot of expertise on our commission, and I think there's although we have a lot of work yet to be done, we are in. I think that we have the brain trust here that we can get the job done, so that we can have a report that we're all proud of when it's time to submit it to the legislature, the governor, and the chief justice, January 2025. We'll get as far as we can into Title IX. We can get through the entire title and speaking for our chairperson, Judge Sokola, the criminal procedure subcommission will work very diligently on Title VIII. And we'll continue to improve the process along. Any comments that you have to improve the way we're doing things, greatly appreciated. If any of the members here need any background research from our office, I'm really the only full-time employee along with Valerie. We hope to be able to hire an additional person in the next fiscal year that can help us, if our legal to give any ideas, any recommendations on people. I appreciate that. And again, the DOCO subcommission especially need more brains so that they can get their reviews done, and we have been reaching out to the governor's office that we'll continue to do that so that we can continue to do it. He permanently named as a voting member in that subcommission. Again, thank you all.
In closing, once again, I want to thank all of you. The comments today, and especially the subcommissions, have done quite a bit of work. As you've heard, my recitation of the various statutory sections, they covered a lot. So I want to thank you all for the amount of effort you put in. It's starting to pay off at this point. If there's no other comments or suggestions, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Any opposed? Thank you all. Thank you very much. John. Let me make sure.
Just a moment.
Thank you all.
Yourself.
Yeah. Are we all?
No, Your Honor, not yet.
And so.